Hi, I'm Lauren, a mom, former teacher, turned children's book author, and your host who joins special guests each episode as we share our top kid-lit picks for sparking hard conversations the easy way. Yep, that means everything from tackling bullying and out-of-control anger to celebrating diversity, inclusion, and leading with kindness, plus so much more. My whole mission of my own children's book series, Blooming Rose, is to provide social and emotional support tools for in and out of the classroom, and this podcast is my way to expand that mission even further. So stay tuned as we dive into this week's topic on the Blooming Books podcast. Hi guys, it's Lauren and I'm here with our special guest today, my friend and fellow kidlit author, elementary educator, and mom to two girlies. Welcome, Miss Sarah Allison. Thanks so much for being on today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yes. So we'll chat in a minute about your books, especially the one about grief that I love. But first, let's get to know you a little bit more. So, can you first tell us a little bit about you and your family and how you got into writing children's books?
Yeah, I have two daughters, 5 and 9. My husband is from the Woodlands, so we're kind of Houston halfway. I'm from Southern California, ended up here in Texas because I got my master's in education at Texas A&M. We are pretty active. We love sports. We love books.
Yep.
Love to travel together. We're just kind of your average two working parent home trying to juggle, make it all work and survive. How I started writing children's books. So during COVID, actually, it was something that I had said that I really, really wanted to do. Maybe 10 years ago, I said I want to write a children's book one day. And I would, duck in and out of ideas when reading children's books, and nothing really felt very authentic. Everything just felt forced. And so I didn't really do much with it. And then during COVID, I obviously had the time and the space to do a little bit more thinking. And I was trying to design like a project-based learning assignment for my daughter and her friends, because all the other moms, were in healthcare or were attorneys or were doing things where they still had to, be very present for their work. And so I was the only educator parent of the group, and I was trying to get the girls to learn more about their own unique family history. And in doing that, I realized, one, that the girls didn't know a lot about their own family history, and two, that there weren't a lot of books that celebrated diversity across a friendship. There were books about singular cultures, but not necessarily ones about friendship and how that is celebrated as part of their friendship. And so I decided, well, that is the story that I have to write. And so that was the first book. So that's how I kind of started, is through COVID.
Yeah. I think a lot of authors I've talked to, it's usually COVID based, sit and stew and all the creative juices gets flowing and then kind of put it into motion after that. So that's very cool. We'll touch on that book in a little bit, as well as the other ones you've written so far, because now you're like a pro, right? Are you working on, what is it, book 5 now? Right?
I am.
Yeah.
5 and 6 is a brainchild. So yeah, not
Awesome.
slowing down.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear about those. I don't know those yet. Okay, first let's get into some silly and random rapid fire questions just for fun. So I know you travel a lot. What is your favorite destination you've been to?
Ooh, that's a good one.
You can't just pick just one, right?
I know, yeah. So I think for me, Hawaii, growing up in California,
Yeah.
Hawaii was an easy trip, right? And to me, it's got this like great mixture of natural beauty, flowers, greenery, the ocean, the animals. And so it allows us to be active. We can hike, we can swim, we can do all of that. So, sans kids, I would say Ireland. Ireland is phenomenal and amazing, and the countryside is like a dream. So I know I picked two, but
I know those are those are good points, with and without kids. Those are definitely on my list too. Okay, when is your favorite time to write, and what is your go-to setup, must-haves, background music? Like, what's your vibe when you're going to like do your creative writing?
yeah. I am a 4 a.m. writer. I cannot write any time of the day. I know, it's insane. So, and I actually set my alarm for 4:07 because in my head, those extra 7 minutes
I
are
mean
like
those.
extra sleep,
Yeah, you're
right?
golden, right?
Yeah, matters. So I listen to classical music. I can't have any like chatter or background noise around me. It's really distracting. So I listen to classical music, I have earbuds in, and I sit downstairs in the dark otherwise. Like I don't turn on a bunch of lights in the house. I just need like silence, peace, darkness. I need my brain to be able to just focus on one task and not have those disruptions around me any other time of day. I don't feel like I do as well. I also get a lot of ideas when I'm like at a writing block when I go running.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I go running, I feel like my brain is more clear. And so often when I've hit a writer's block and I go running, I'm able to sort through some of that. But yeah,
Yeah,
early morning,
that's a
4:07
good
a.m.
idea.
Catch me
Well,
on the
it's
couch in the
almost
dark.
like, yeah, if when you're up that early, like you don't feel the pressure of the rest of the day yet. Like you
Yep.
feel, this is what I imagine. I can't get up that early, but maybe five. But you don't feel the pressure of like you're running behind and you're not doing
Hmm.
all the things yet, right? And your kids aren't up yet. So it sounds so nice and quiet. So I
Yeah.
imagine that's great.
Yeah. It's hard.
Okay.
It was a hard routine to get into, but it is the only time I can do it now.
Yeah. Okay. So what is a weird hobby or talent you have or wished you had?
Oh man. So I'm a skier. I'm a downhill, like I have a gold, two golds, a silver, and a bronze medal in downhill ski racing. And I've also been heli skiing, like out of a helicopter. I
Stop
feel like
it.
that's kind of a weird hobby talent,
Yes.
right? Sort
That
of.
is
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds awesome. So, like, how far do they drop you? Like, if you're in a helicopter and you drop out,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, how far down do you drop?
So they usually will touch down on the glacier for you, depending on like avalanche type conditions and weather conditions and things like that. I've never actually free fallen out of the helicopter.
Okay.
Um, I've gone up and they've either touched down or hovered right on top of the glacier area. And
Yeah, that makes
then
more sense.
yeah, 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 I know.
That's awesome.
Random, huh?
I went skiing one time and it was not a pretty sight. I think my back was sopping wet just because every time I would just like skid down. But
Mm-hmm.
we went a couple, I guess it was last spring, we went with the family. My son was kind of young. So me and him just hung back. But now I was like, really, I'm like, dang, next time I want to go and I'm going to try that again because
Yeah.
it does look fun. But yeah, that's awesome.
I know. Highly recommend lessons. I started at age
Yes.
3, and
Oh.
so it's different, but now as an adult, because I know how hurt I can get, whereas as a
Mm-hmm.
kid, I was a little bit more Gumby-esque.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more fearful now and more careful than I was as a kid, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, now we're going to switch gears and dive into this week's topic. So, I think grief, loss, and impending loss, and just the general fear and anxiety around an illness is such a heavy conversation that may or may not come up rather abruptly, and parents might be left scrambling, to figure out how to approach it with your kids or when they drop those random questions on you. Your book, The Memory Keepers, was your take on how you approach the conversation around your mom's Alzheimer's diagnosis with your two young girls. And can you tell us a little bit about your family and your mom's journey with that?
Yeah, so my mom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's around the age of 52. She
Wow.
started to show signs in her 40s.
Oh
And
my gosh.
so, yeah, really, really
Really early.
young. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that was most challenging, I think, was that we would see each decline and then we would kind of level out, right? So there would be this decline where, let's say, her coordination wasn't as strong, but then we'd level out before another decline. And so it was many, many years. First it was having to write a bunch of notes everywhere and scraps of paper everywhere because she couldn't remember anything. And, it was like the list taking and the pausing and the confusion over details. And then, it was things like being able to follow step-by-step directions. So she was not able to follow the directions on the back of a box of rice. And so I smelled something on the stove burning. I went over there. The rice was in the pot. The burner was on, but there was no water. So
Mm,
she had like forgotten about that step.
yeah.
And so she would skip these like big things. One of her really big declines, we lived in the same house for 17 years, and she got lost driving a mile from the house. And she called my dad hysterical from the side of the road, didn't know where she was. She just kind of, I don't know. And so after that, my dad surrendered her driver's license. and she was in her early 60s at that point. My dad hadn't even retired yet. And so, um, then after that, she wandered out of the house and was trying to get into
Yeah.
the neighbor's house. So there were just like all of these huge declines and just across so many years. It was very painful, very, very painful.
How old were your girls? I guess that started before they were born, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
did they know? Because I think that's kind of what's hard when you're dealing with, we have dementia in one of our, not Alzheimer's, but many forms of dementia actually layered case with that. And it's hard to explain to my kids kind of how they were before, or just like seeing an adult to a
Yeah.
kid that is acting kind of odd or acting forgetful or acting almost childlike sometimes is very confusing to them. So I think
Yeah.
that's a key piece with this Alzheimer's dementia kind of route, you know? So how old
Yeah.
were they? Like, do they really remember her as being in that state, or do they remember before that?
Yeah, so my oldest, my 9-year-old, my mom still drove when she was born. And so I have a lot of pictures of them really active together. She
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily remember it, but I have tons of pictures of them doing a lot of things together. So she definitely experienced the relationship with my mom differently. By
Yeah.
the time my 5-year-old was born, my mom's like fine motor and her coordination wasn't good. And so she couldn't hold her standing up. I didn't trust her not to drop her. And
Yeah.
so she had to be seated with pillows supporting her arms, and there had to be another adult, like somebody nearby, just in case her arms like just fell, right?
Yeah.
So the pictures I have for my 5-year-old of her and my mom are very different because they aren't doing active things. They aren't, on a trip or on a vacation or at the park playing and things like that. So the pictures that they both have to look back on are different. But my 9-year-old does remember seeing the decline. She
Yeah.
saw like my dad having to spoon feed my mom, and she was, probably 5 or 6 at that point. So
Yeah.
she knew, right? That there was a very big difference, and that wasn't normal for an adult to need that kind of help.
It's so hard because I mean, the brain is so complex, but it is at the end of the day just another organ. And so when the brain declines, it looks so much different than any other body part. you
Yeah,
know, it's
yeah,
easy to see someone who, doesn't feel physically well, but mentally well is just such a hard thing to explain for kids. So,
yes.
um, I think impending loss and grief is such a hard topic too because we're navigating our own feelings as adults, at the same time
Mhm.
that we're worrying. It's as being her child, I'm sure even for you as an adult, it's hard to see your mom go from being the a caring one to having to care for her. And then you're also worrying and trying to guide your own kiddos through that. So do you have any advice for other families that are going through similar situations on what may have or may not have, made things a little bit smoother for you and your girls?
Yeah, so the questions when they come up, right? You're not totally prepared. You can't rehearse
Hmm.
everything that a child may ask because they just, they can ask anything. So when my kids asked what's wrong with Mimi, that was really hard because I couldn't say, oh, well, she has Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's disease is, like that's not age appropriate for them. So I wanted to be honest, but I
Yeah.
also wanted to be age appropriate. And so that was kind of like the two rules that I took in addressing any conversation is be as honest as possible in language that they could relate to. So I would say Mimi's brain is really sick. Well, what
Mm.
happens when your brain is sick? Well, you forget how to do things you used to do. And I'd give concrete examples. Or when they said, will she get better? And I had to say no. I
Yeah.
mean, talk about just gut wrenching. And
Mm.
so they said, why? Lots of people get sick and a lot of people get better. And I said, well, this is not one of those illnesses that you can get better from. And that was very hard. But I think just the honesty is really important, as hard as it is for us. They need to not have false hope. They need to understand that sometimes sad things happen
Yeah.
and, the people we love are still in their hearts the same people. That was another big thing for us is, what if how come Mimi doesn't know our name, right? And if she doesn't know our name, how does she know who we are? And so my friend Noelle, whose story is intertwined in the Memory Keepers with mine, she is the one who said, even if their brain is really sick and if someday they don't remember your name, their heart will always know that they love you.
Yeah.
And that was like my favorite thing. And so that appears in the book as well, but that was something I thought that made it easier. Even if the brain doesn't know, the heart will always know. And so that was, a hopeful piece of advice that I was
Yes.
able to share with them.
I do love that. So let's chat about your book a little bit more because books, like I always say, are really a magical way to relate kids to the concrete characters that they can see and feel react in situations that might be similar to what they're experiencing. Knowing they're not alone in feeling a certain type of way, that's so valuable in my opinion. So, can you tell us a little bit more about the story and the characters in The Memory Keepers?
Yeah, so Mia is my friend's real daughter. And her and I, my friend Noelle, we played college sports together. We played soccer together. She lost her dad to Alzheimer's before I lost my mom, and she has a young daughter. So I leaned heavily on her in just how to navigate the conversations. And through
Yeah.
those conversations is how we decided we should write this story. This would be great for other families to relate to. So Mia is her daughter, and the character is made to look exactly like her daughter. And then Anne is fictional. So I obviously couldn't pick one of my daughters since I have two to be the
Mhm.
other character. And so Anne was my mom's middle name. And
Oh,
so that's why the character's name is Anne, and it's made to be the fictional representation of my two girls. And it's their like conversations throughout a day of walking around or playing or driving in the car or having dinner, and how just the day-to-day things have symbols or reminders of our loved ones, and the way that we remember them can help us still feel close to them, right? We can carry on their memories, we can carry on their traditions. And so it's a day in the life of these two girls just playing and being kids, but how they continue to remember their loved ones even though they're gone.
yeah, I love that so much. So the book I chose is called The Perfect Shelter by Clare Helen Welsh, and it's about creating and protecting the safe space at home. The main character is a little girl, and her sister has a serious illness. And I think when kids can read about characters having the same fears and anxieties that this main character had when family members are ill is really powerful for them to see and to point out things they might be able to control amidst so many factors that are out of their control. So for
Yeah.
her, it's all about finding a calm, protective place and like a literal shelter, a little fort that they would build, and that was where her peace was, amidst their journey together as a family.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's one of the scariest parts about these types of journeys, right? Is like the unknown and all the things that you can't control. So
Yeah.
I love how, the memory keepers is saying, okay, this is what we can control. This is what we can hold on to. Or whether it's just a calming space, this is what we can foster, in our homes,
Yeah.
when you're dealing with something so heavy.
And I think for kids too, because so much of their experiences when they're young are out of their control, right?
Hmm.
And so for them to be given a space or a thing that they can do to feel like they're participating in remembering them or being supportive or having a task or having a job, things like that. I think it's important that we don't remove them from the situation, that in whatever way is appropriate for their age, that they get to participate and be involved in whatever it is.
Yeah. And I was going to say earlier too, when you're talking about being honest, um, like, I think there's a lot of mystery and a lot maybe more fear for in our kids that our kids might harbor, and we don't even realize it when we're not being honest, and we're like, "Oh, it's okay. She'll be okay," and you kind of brush
Yep.
it under the rug. And I
Yep.
know every instance you're not gonna be able as the adult that's also going through it, be able to have those conversations, but I think it's always, like you said, an important thing to circle back and touch
Yep.
in and say, "No, look, this is what's happening. This is what it might look like, and this is what's going to happen, and we're gonna be okay, and we can control this, this, and this."
Yep.
And so it helps take some of that fear away because they do know what to expect,
Yeah.
Okay, so with every episode, I'll also be creating a correlating SEL resource, which is available on our Teachers Pay Teachers page and linked in the show notes. This week, it kind of goes along with what they can do and they can control is I've done a activity called the memory box. And so first they're going to decorate the memory box. They can decorate, in class, or this could be like an at-home project, of course. And then we have prompts with things that they can actually add or things that they can do together with their loved ones, like writing letters together, asking about recipes they used to make together, or, things like that. And so it gives them lots of ideas on things that they can add to their box. Because again, like you said, the concrete things that the kids can see and touch and understand help them with such, abstract, conversations in a way.
I love
So,
that. That's so
yeah.
cool. I want to see that. I'm going to have to
Yes,
check that out. That's a great idea.
absolutely. Okay, so before we go, let's take a minute to share our hashtag one of the week because none of us are perfect parents or educators, so we're going to celebrate what went right. I would normally ask what is one situation where you've been in lately where you feel, you had a breakthrough moment or a moment of connection with one of your kiddos or students, but I would really love to brag on you for a minute and have you talk about how you were a conference speaker last week at the Alzheimer's Association. Was it like, I don't know the proper name for it, but the luncheon or
Yeah. So one of the most amazing things about having this experience, which is hard and emotional, is that I've been able to become more connected and involved with the Alzheimer's Association here in Houston and Southeast Texas. And they invited me to be the keynote speaker for the family portrait luncheon.
oh,
And so I know it's an incredible event. There were hundreds of people, almost
it was
400 people
huge.
there.
I
It
saw
was
your pictures on stories.
huge.
I'm like, go girl, that is huge.
I stood up at the microphone and the first thing I said was, wow, there are a lot of people in this
Yeah.
room.
And you're all looking at me. Okay.
I
Hi.
know, I know. Hi. So I got to share our family story, and they purchased a copy of the Memory Keepers for every single attendee. And so every person took home a copy of the book. And
Amazing,
it
by the
has
way.
made me feel like I'm doing something good with my grief, right? Like I can be really sad, and I am very sad, and I still
Hmm.
struggle with the grief and loss of my mom at the age of 69. It's just we were robbed
Yeah.
of so much time with her. But I'm also able to do something to use my voice, to raise awareness, to help other families who have little kids around, hopefully navigate this situation with, a little bit more direction or a few tips that might help make it easier. So yeah, it was huge. It was so amazing. I was so grateful that they included me, and it's just any opportunity I can to be around people who get it
Hmm.
just feels really nice. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great event. I really enjoyed it.
Well,
And I
congratulations.
made
That
it
was
through my
awesome.
speech. So yay.
Hashtag win. That's a big win.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, no one wants to be in this category of, tragedy or loss, but one
Yeah,
of the, I guess if you say the beautiful things about it is it really does bring people together on that real level. You can chit chat with
yeah,
people all day, but it's like when you're really looking at them and sharing in your pain and your situations that other people have been in, like that's such a, important part to this human connection that we all have.
it is. It is.
So,
Absolutely.
okay. Well, this has been so fun, so insightful. Thank you again so much for being on our first season. Can you tell us a little bit about your other three books and how people can stay in touch and follow along with your author journey?
Yes. So I have a series, which I didn't set out to be a series, but now it is, Audrey Saurus. And so for like the 0 to 5-year-old families who have bedtime and all the crazy toddler antics happening in their house, I have Audrey Saurus and Audrey Saurus in the Bedtime Situation. And each of us was actually what my first story, right? That's how I
Mhm.
became an author. Each of us, and it's a story about 5 girls and their unique families and the recipes and traditions that they have and how they share those things across their friendship. So it's very much like a beginning of year community building or at
Yes.
home, being proud of who you are and what makes you unique, kind of a message there. And yeah, I share a lot on Instagram, not as much as I would like to, but working mom and doing all
Yes.
the things. So my books are there, and
Can you tell
yeah.
us a little bit about the book you're working on now, or is that
Oh
still
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
top secret?
Yeah. So I have a book at illustration right now. Very unique story. So a girlfriend of mine, her daughter is actually one of the girls in Each of Us. Her mom turns 80 this year, and it's her 50th year in practice. And she came from a small village in India, and now is a pediatrician.
Oh
And
wow,
I know, and it's her 50th year in practice as a pediatrician. And so
that's
it's the
crazy.
story. I haven't titled it. It's sort of at this point loosely called Anything is Possible. And it's just a story of how a girl's dream and her hard work from, coming from nothing to becoming a doctor. And she really wants to share the message that, if you're willing to put in the hard work and you're willing to dream and you're willing to not give up on yourself, that anything is possible. And so
Yeah.
that's an illustration right there. And then I have a brainchild book that I'm working on with a pain management physician at MD Anderson, actually.
Oh wow.
And yeah, she approached me and wanted to write a book together about um, a cancer diagnosis in the family and how then a child navigates that experience. And
Mhm.
so, because I have not personally experienced cancer, I lean on her heavily for that perspective. But we've discussed the storyline, we've met about it a few times. We're starting to jot notes now. So that one's at least a year or two down the road. But yeah,
That's
keeping busy.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Every time I look at you, you're, on Instagram, you're always up and doing something, and your girls are very active in sports and all the things, and y'all travel all the time. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
how does she have time to write books? And it's at 4 a.m.
4:07 a.m. 4:07
So,
a.m. That's where
yeah,
I'm at.
I'm like, okay, maybe I need to wake up a little earlier, but no. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. I think that's it on this week's episode. Thank you again, Sarah, for joining us. And thank you guys for listening. I hope you've gained a couple of helpful nuggets for guiding your kids or students through the ebbs and flows of the grief and impending loss process. So we'll see you guys next time on the Blooming Books podcast.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Blooming Books podcast, recorded and produced by Blooming Rose Kids. We've opted to keep our series ad-free, and if you'd like to support our efforts, please consider shopping our own custom-signed Blooming Rose books at bloomingrosekids.com and our academic materials on our Teachers Pay Teachers page. All of the books mentioned in this episode are also available via our affiliate links in the show notes. We so appreciate you being here and hope to see you next time.